Mark and Laura had everything anyone could want: a beautiful home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, two young children, and careers that kept them comfortably set for life. To their neighbors, they were the model couple, always seen together at community events, hosting gatherings, and raising their kids with what seemed to be unshakable love and care. Mark, a well-established businessman, was frequently praised for his hard work, while Laura, an elegant and seemingly devoted wife, was admired for her warmth and grace. They had been married for 7 years, and to the outside world they appeared to be living a fairy tale life. But behind closed doors, the truth was far from perfect. Laura, though outwardly the picture of a loving wife and mother, was hiding a secret so dangerous, so unpredictable, it would eventually tear apart the world she had carefully constructed. For months, Laura had been engaged in a forbidden affair with their neighbor, Lisa, a woman she a woman she had met just 2 years earlier. What started as an innocent friendship between the two women quickly turned into something far more passionate and intense. Lisa was a striking woman, confident and assertive, a stark contrast to Laura's more reserved demeanor. Their chemistry was undeniable, and before long, what was once a platonic bond turned into a torrid love affair, carried out in secret. Laura had become torn between two worlds: the love she had for her children and husband, and the uncontainable passion she felt for Lisa. Each meeting with Lisa felt like an escape, a place where she could be free from the constraints of her suburban life. But as their relationship deepened, so did the dangers. They had to be careful. No one could know. Mark, oblivious to the growing tension in his own home, trusted his wife completely. But little did he know that his life and the lives of his children were hanging by a thread. What was once a fleeting, guilty pleasure had now become an obsession. As the affair continued, Laura found herself unable to stop seeing Lisa, even though she knew the risks of getting caught were rising with every passing day. The meetings became more frequent, more reckless. Their secret world, once carefully concealed behind closed doors, was becoming increasingly difficult to keep under wraps. And Lisa, perhaps unknowingly, had become a threat to everything Laura had built. As Laura spent more time with Lisa, the guilt and the weight of her double life grew heavier. Every smile and every glance she exchanged with her family felt more forced, more artificial, as the secret affair consumed her thoughts. She was no longer just a wife and mother. She was someone leading a double life, living in constant fear that the walls would come crashing down. At the same time, Lisa had her own complicated emotions. She had fallen for Laura deeply and passionately, but she also began to feel the tension of their secret meetings and the risks involved. She wanted more than just stolen moments in the dark corners of their world. She wanted Laura to leave Mark and be with her. Lisa's desire to have Laura all to herself was intensifying, and as much as Laura tried to keep her two worlds separate, she knew deep down that one of them had to give. This volatile mixture of desire, guilt, and fear created a powder keg ready to explode. Neither Laura nor Lisa could have predicted just how catastrophic the outcome would be. What seemed like a simple affair, no more than a risky but thrilling escape from the ordinary, would soon take a deadly turn. As the affair spiraled deeper, so did the secrets they were both desperately trying to protect. And with Mark completely unaware, the storm was brewing, and the devastating consequences of their actions were just around the corner. Laura's decision would lead to an unimaginable tragedy, one that would change their lives forever. As the walls began to close in, Laura knew that the inevitable was approaching. The horrifying reality of what was about to happen could not be avoided. The tension in Laura's life had reached a breaking point. For months, she had been living a lie, keeping the dangerous secret of her affair with Lisa, while trying to maintain the image of the perfect wife and mother for Mark and their children. But the cracks in the facade were becoming impossible to hide. Laura's emotions were a whirlwind, torn between the life she had with Mark and her deep, passionate connection with Lisa. Every stolen moment with Lisa intensified her internal conflict, and she knew that eventually something had to give. But what would it be? Lisa had started to press her more about the future, asking when Laura would leave Mark and make their relationship public. Lisa was growing frustrated with the secrecy, and the longer the affair went on, the more desperate she became. She wanted Laura, and she wanted her now. Laura, however, was caught between two forces that seemed impossible to reconcile. She had children, a family, and responsibilities, things that Lisa didn't fully understand. Lisa's demands were growing more urgent, and Laura felt the pressure mounting on all sides. It wasn't just about love anymore, it was about control, desperation, and ultimately, fear. Laura began to fear that if she didn't make a choice soon, the consequences would be too great. But no matter how much she tried to rationalize her situation, the answer seemed elusive. How could she abandon her family for the woman she loved? Could she really leave her children behind? Would it be worth it? Meanwhile, Mark, who had always trusted his wife completely, began to notice small changes in Laura's behavior. There were subtle shifts in her mood, and she seemed distracted, as though she was never fully present when they were together. The conversations that had once been easy and full of warmth now felt awkward and forced. Mark began to suspect something was wrong, but didn't have the slightest clue about the true reason behind it. He tried to confront Laura, asking if there was something bothering her, but she always brushed it off with a reassuring smile and a quick change of subject. Yet, the sense that something was amiss only grew stronger with time. His concern deepened, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial, something right in front of him. It wasn't just Mark's growing suspicions that were causing Laura distress. The pressure from Lisa had begun to reach a boiling point. Lisa's impatience was palpable. She wanted Laura to leave Mark, to cut all ties and start a new life together, one where they didn't have to hide anymore. Laura tried to avoid confrontation, but the truth was becoming harder to ignore. Lisa was no longer willing to play the waiting game. The last time they met, Lisa had been more forceful than ever, pushing Laura to make a choice, to act now before it was too late. The walls were closing in, and it was clear that time was running out. Laura was living in a constant state of fear, knowing that if Mark ever found out the truth, it would destroy everything. But the fear of losing Lisa was just as strong. Lisa had become the one person who truly understood her, like who made her feel alive and wanted in ways she hadn't felt in years. The intensity of their connection was undeniable. But as much as Laura wanted to escape the suffocating expectations of her family life, there was a voice inside her that told her to hold on, to fight for her marriage and her children. Yet, each time she tried to pull away from Lisa, the emotional pull brought her right back into the arms of the woman she knew she could never have. As the weeks passed, the situation escalated. Lisa's demands grew more desperate, and Laura's guilt mounted with every passing day. The secret was too dangerous to keep, but the consequences of revealing it were too devastating to comprehend. Laura's mind raced with impossible decisions, each one more agonizing than the last. She had to choose, but there was no easy way out. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about the lies, the betrayal, and the possibility of losing everything. One evening, after a particularly heated argument between Laura and Lisa, it became clear that something had to give. Lisa's anger flared as she told Laura that she was done waiting. If Laura didn't leave Mark, then the affair would be over. The ultimatum had been set, and Laura was faced with the terrifying reality of having to make a decision. But as the hours passed and the emotional weight of the situation sunk in, Laura found herself unable to act. Her mind raced, and her heart ached, but she couldn't bring herself to face the consequences of ending the affair with Lisa. The pressure had become too much, and Laura made a decision that would change everything. That night, as the tension between Laura and Lisa reached a new height, the moment of truth arrived. Lisa, perhaps sensing the conflict within Laura, suggested one final solution, a plan that would remove Mark from the equation completely. She whispered the words that no one could have expected. "You know what you have to do, don't you?" It was the kind of suggestion that could never be taken back. And at that moment, Laura realized the depths to which her secret life had dragged her. She was trapped, unable to turn back from the choices she had made. The consequences of the affair and the decision she was about to make would seal her fate forever. The path she was about to take would lead to a deadly confrontation that would change everything. The storm was approaching, and no one could stop it. The fateful night arrived like a ticking time bomb, each passing second bringing Laura closer to a choice she never imagined she would have to make. It was the culmination of months of deception, fear, and emotional turmoil that had been steadily building up, culminating in a moment where the lines between love and betrayal blurred beyond recognition. Lisa's ultimatum had been clear. If Laura didn't make a decision, if she didn't act now, their affair would be over and everything would be lost. The pressure had mounted so intensely that Laura, in her broken state, felt as though she had no other option. The thought of losing Lisa was unbearable, but so was the thought of losing her family, her children, and the life she had carefully built. The internal conflict that had been tearing her apart finally reached a breaking point. That night, Laura had come to a decision. As Mark was working late, she found herself standing in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection, asking herself the impossible question. Could she truly go through with it? Could she betray her husband, the father of her children, for the woman who had captured her heart in ways she couldn't fully explain? The answer came to her, quiet but definitive. Yes. Her heart raced as she grabbed the phone, texting Lisa the message that would change everything. I'm done. I'll do it. Lisa, who had been waiting for this moment, instantly responded with excitement and a sense of relief. The weight that had been pressing down on Laura's shoulders seemed to lift for the first time in months. But as the minutes ticked by, a sinking feeling grew inside her, as though the momentary release of tension had only made her realize the irreversible consequences of her actions. It was too late now to turn back. Later that evening, after Mark came home, the atmosphere in their house felt heavier than usual. Mark, sensing that something was off, tried to engage with Laura, but she seemed distant, almost detached. They had dinner together, but it was a hollow routine, a stark contrast to the lively conversations they once shared. As the night drew to a close, Mark kissed her goodnight, oblivious to the turmoil inside her. As he settled into bed, Laura sat in the dim light of the living room, her thoughts racing with a mix of fear and anticipation. She wasn't sure how much longer she could pretend that everything was normal. The lies had become too big and the stakes too high. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Lisa. It's time. The words were simple, but to Laura, they carried the weight of the world. But just as Laura made her decision to leave, to break free from the life she had known, an unexpected twist occurred that no one could have anticipated. The next morning, everything changed. It began with a knock at the door. Mark answered, only to find the police standing on his doorstep. The words that followed were like a punch to the gut. There has been an incident. We need to speak with your wife. Mark, utterly confused, felt his heart stop. What had happened? Laura, pale and shaking, was pulled into a police car, her eyes locked with Mark's, full of fear and regret, but with no explanation to offer. As she was driven away, Mark was left standing in the doorway, unable to comprehend the horror unfolding before him. The truth was revealed soon after. The night before, after Laura had sent the message to Lisa, she and Lisa had met one final time at Lisa's house. What had started as a conversation about their future together turned into a violent argument. Lisa, angry and desperate, had confronted Laura about her indecision, about the months of waiting, about the guilt that was holding Laura back. But that wasn't the worst part. In the heat of the argument, Lisa lost control. Words turned to shoves, and before Laura could escape, the situation escalated into violence. The fight turned fatal when Lisa, in a moment of blind rage, grabbed a knife from the kitchen. The details were hazy, but what was clear was that Laura had been stabbed multiple times. She had barely managed to escape, running back to her home, bloodied and broken. Lisa, realizing what she had done, fled the scene, leaving Laura to die in the streets. The police found Laura barely clinging to life, and she was rushed to the hospital, but the damage had been done. She had suffered life-threatening injuries that would haunt her forever. Mark, devastated and heartbroken by the truth, could hardly believe the words as they were spoken. The woman he had loved, the woman who had been his everything, had betrayed him in the most unimaginable way. And the person she had been involved with, the woman who had once been his neighbor, his friend, had become the one to destroy everything. Laura was not the woman he had known. She had been living a lie, and that lie had cost them everything. As for Lisa, she was soon caught and arrested. But the legal battle that ensued was only the beginning of a much larger emotional reckoning for everyone involved. The pain that Mark would feel, knowing the depth of the betrayal, would stay with him forever. Laura, too, would never escape the weight of her choices. The scars, both physical and emotional, would remain long after the cameras and headlines had faded away. In the end, it was a tragic tale of love, betrayal, and the consequences of living a double life. Laura had chosen her forbidden passion over her family, and that choice led to a devastating, irreversible tragedy. The price of secrets, of lies, of desires that can never be fulfilled. Sometimes the cost is too great, and for Laura, there was no way out, no way to undo the damage. The perfect life she had once known was shattered beyond repair. And as the dust settled, Mark was left with a haunting question. Could he ever forgive her? Could he ever understand why? The story ends not with closure, but with a haunting truth. Sometimes the darkest secrets are the ones that, once exposed, can never be undone.